Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So if you haven't already seen the video that I posted before this one, then you definitely want to watch that first so that you have some context on what I'm talking about. Plus you can see where I've been, because I was gone for over a year and a half, and what I was going through during that time, and now how everything is moving forward. So if you've already done your homework and watched the first video, then you guys will know why this video is titled I Kissed a Fraud, because the reality is I did. And so of course that's a play on words. Instead of I kissed a frog, I kissed a fraud. I did marry my fraud, and so that's what I tend to call this individual. I don't call them like my ex-husband, because like that wasn't a husband, but it definitely was a fraud. So I'm just gonna kind of tell you some of the things that I experienced and the flags that I saw later on, and then that'll lead into the next series, which is the Hussy and the Fraud, which is a play on the Princess and the Frog. So yes, y'all, hopefully you guys will stay tuned. I tried to make this very heavy and, you know, heavy information that I'm giving you guys into a lighthearted, like, you know, thing. Guys, so your girl got married 10-10-15 at the age of 28. And so now looking back, I can confidently say your girl shouldn't have got married. Now that's looking back, of course, hindsight being 2020, but I know that I didn't truly know what I know now, of course, but just what it really meant to be married. I didn't really have examples of like how a husband should be. I knew that I desired to be a wife and that I knew I would make a great wife, but you can't just make a marriage and a home by yourself, and that's something that I learned. And so in getting married, I did see red flags even before we got married. Like, we moved pretty quickly. I'm gonna be honest, we moved pretty quickly. So I'll say in the dating stages, again, like I said, red flags were present, but I didn't know at the time that they were red flags. We did get engaged after, I believe it was 6 months, and we did not know each other before dating. We did meet like at the barbershop through a mutual, I would say, acquaintance now, because that person, when you know somebody is dirty and you do not give somebody a heads up, you're no longer a friend or a brother or whatever to me. But yeah, so we went through the dating process, and then we went through the engagement process, and then I will say leading up to our wedding, we went to go get our marriage certificate. And when we went to go get our marriage certificate, that is probably where the biggest flag should have came up. And that was when they passed us the marriage certificate back. He like kind of like took it off to the side, and I was like, what are you doing? I want to see it. Like, I'm excited. And so when he gave it to me, I saw that it said he was previously married and he's much older than I am. So I saw that it said his marriage had ended a month prior to us getting married. Like, mind you, our wedding date, it was like 7 days out or something like that. And so I'm like, you told me you've been divorced for a while now, like years. Why does it say this date right here? And so I know now, like, he gave me some BS story about paperwork and whatever, and that they had been separated and divorced, but that something about paperwork. Now, having gone through the process, I know that was complete crap, right? But at the time, I didn't know what to do with that information, right? I didn't know who to tell, who to talk to about it. And I honestly didn't know if I would cancel my wedding days before because of this information. Probably should have, but you know, again, hindsight. So of course we decided to move forward and we got married. And so we get married, beautiful wedding. We have a beautiful honeymoon in Hawaii. We come back, everything seems to be okay. Until when we got married, people gave us checks and money, right? And so they put my last name as my new last name, but I hadn't changed my name yet. And so, we needed to get joint accounts. I was like, okay, this is the time where I guess, you know, when you get married, you get joint accounts. So we go to the bank, and I remember distinctly that when we sat in front of the banker and I told them like, oh, okay, we're here to open up joint accounts, the banker like literally kept trying to warn me with their eyes. And at the time I did not know, y'all. I was just like, okay. They were like, are you sure? And I was like, yeah, like, we want to open up a joint account. And so then they made it really clear, like, you're the primary account holder and he's the secondary account holder. And I was like, okay. And they were like, primary. you're the primary. And I'm like, okay. And so we go ahead, we open up the account, we put the money in there. And so eventually, like, we were taking money out but not putting any money in, so then the balance got low. So I was like, look, I got my own accounts, I don't really need this account, but I'll let you, you know, take over. So he's like, okay, cool. Y'all, I started getting notifications, bank, what is it called? Overdraft. And I'm like, hey, what's going on with this account? Oh, I'll take care of it. Okay. So eventually it happens too many times to where I was like, you know what? I don't feel comfortable with my name on this account anymore. So I'm going to take my name off and like, you can have it. He was like, oh, okay, yeah, no problem. I take my name off. Y'all, maybe months later, they send me a notice like, you owe, I think it was like $900, something like that. And I'm like, who owe $800, $900? And so I literally, thankfully, I keep everything and I have receipts. And so therefore I was able to send them my receipt that said I took my name off the account, and they confirmed it and was like, okay, you're no longer responsible for this balance that he left. Again, he gave me some BS story about how he didn't pay something and he just closed the account. So again, I'm just like, whew, this is pretty early on in the marriage. And I mean, we had a financial, what is it called? A financial person that looked over our financials and stuff. So I'm thinking that I did the right thing. I'm thinking like we ran credit checks and stuff. Like we had a financial specialist or whatever you want to call it. So for me, I did not know this stuff until after the marriage. So another incident happened shortly after we got married. We're at my son's baseball practice. We're at practice and we start to walk back to the car and his car is missing. Where's your car? And he's like, my car is stolen. Oh my goodness. Da 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 blah blah blah. So I'm like, okay, like, and so I'm freaking out because my purse is in the car, my work bag with my work laptop is in his car. You know, like my wallet, everything, my keys, everything is in his car. So I'm panicking, thinking like somebody stole the car, they're at our house, like all of this. So he calls the police, and I think within minutes the police call back and like, sir, your car wasn't stolen, it was repossessed. Wait, what? Say what now? So y'all, like the humiliation, y'all, like I remember that time so vividly because having been a single parent before, a single mother prior to getting married, I never had to deal with none of the stuff that I was dealing with in a marriage. And so for me, I'm just like, wait, I don't understand. I thought when you get married, like life gets better, or like it figures itself out. Like, how is it? I feel like I'm struggling more in a marriage than when I was by myself and a single parent. So yes, go through that experience. He gives me a sob story that next morning. And I'm just like, okay, maybe these are those hard times that people were talking about. That first year, it's really hard and stuff, right? And so basically things just continue to happen throughout the marriage. And it was always centered around finances. And I just never made any sense how, like, where's your money going, right? But then it's crazy because I had got laid off shortly, I want to say shortly after we got married. And he really was the one responsible for keeping, you know, the house together during that time. And I will say, looking back on it, I don't think it was so much of him allowing me that space to, you know, become an influencer and figure out what my heart's desires or whatever. I feel like that was God's way of, you know, giving him a lesson, because God knew how much of a fraud he was, but I didn't know. So fast forward, I'll move forward to like 2019. I had just really got to a place where I just was not happy. Like overall wasn't happy. And he would even tell me like, why don't you just leave? Like, you're miserable, you know, why don't you just leave? And in my mind, I was like, I gotta stick it out. I gotta fight it out. Like, I'm not a quitter. I don't want to fail in my marriage, right? I just need to push through. But there's a distinct moment when I went to Palm Springs. I honestly ran away, guys. So I ran away, went to Palm Springs for a weekend, and I got to the top of this, what is it called? It's called Coachella Valley Vista. I got to the top of this mountain and I cried and I prayed and I wrote. And I was like, God, please reveal to me what you would have me do, what moves you want me to make. Like, I have no, like, I don't know. Y'all, like, that's really the space that I was in. Like, I just did not know. Like, I was like, I should not have to run away from my house. I should not have to run away from my marriage. Like, this can't be life. I'm not happy. And it wasn't even just about being happy. Like, I wasn't being treated the way that I knew I should have been treated. And so that day I left the Palm Springs that day. And it wasn't until March of 2020, which is when COVID hit, when I feel like God truly just flipped up the blinders and was like, this is what I want you to see. And so basically it was like, once COVID hit, you know how everybody's running to get, you know, paper towels and toilet tissue and all of that. I had did that, and I had went to, I think, like a total of like 10 stores or something looking for paper towels, tissue, all of this stuff, right? And so I had asked him, I was like, since I did this, can you get the food? Like, please, like, I already have like social anxiety. I don't like going to grocery stores and shopping with a lot of people. So can you do the grocery part? And he was like, oh yeah, I can do it. Y'all, a week went by and he did not buy not one single grocery. And so at the time, we have a family of 4. It's me, him, his daughter, my son. So I'm like, we need food, like get us food, right? So I tried the nice attempt. I tried, hey, can you get us some food? I tried the, hey, I'm really concerned, like, can you really get us some food? Then I tried like, hey, I'm at this point, like, I'm tired of having to continue to tell you like we need food, but like we need food. So by the 4th time, I just went out and did it myself. So I had went to, I think it was like 4 stores and had bought approximately $300 to like $500 worth of groceries. And so I remember the night that I brought the groceries home, he had to work late. And so he happened to come like right after we had already made a few trips back and forth bringing the groceries in. So when he comes to the car, he's like, where'd you find these? It wasn't like, hey babe, you know, nice to see you, glad you're home, like what you've been doing. Like, it wasn't none of that. It was just like, where'd you get these? And I was like, at the store. And he was like, well, you can go back, you can go upstairs, I'll bring in the rest. So I'm like, okay. It was only like a little left anyway, right? So all the groceries are put upstairs. He literally puts the groceries down and then walks into the room and goes to bed. So yeah, he doesn't ask, do I need help putting the groceries up? He doesn't offer, volunteer, like anything. He just goes to sleep. So it was in that moment that I honestly felt like I was so alone in my marriage, right? Like, how is it that we're going through a pandemic, right? None of us have ever been through a pandemic before, but I'm the only one that is trying to provide for our family. Make it make sense. And so I remember I had talked to my friend at the time, and she's married, and she's like, oh, my husband went out and did this, that, and the other. And I'm hearing all these stories about what husbands have done, but my husband ain't did nothing. So I'm just like, I just didn't understand, right? So by this time I completely shut down. And so I'm just not in the mood for like talking or anything. And so the next day happens to be a Friday. He tries to do that, like, you know, good morning type thing. And I'm just really dry. Like, I'm not feeling it. So that evening I come home, I'm cleaning out my closet, and he comes home and he just starts taking his stuff off, but he doesn't say anything. And so he goes into the living room, and when he goes into the living room, his daughter's in the living room, and he just starts to basically be like, I don't give a that she brought these groceries, F these groceries, and da-da-da-da. And I literally had to, like, I have a mirror that's right here, and so I could see from my closet in the mirror, like, who's he talking to, right? And so once I realized who he was talking to, I was like, for me, the disrespect is always blatant and loud. Like, it was just so blatant and loud. But then the apology would be so quiet, or it would be a text message or whatever. And it was just like, I knew, like, I did not deserve that. And so I didn't engage. In my mind, like, look, I've been working in the social services field. I got clients and stuff. I learned, like, do not engage. Like, he didn't want any resolve. He wanted an argument or whatever, and I wasn't going to give it to him. And so that next morning, it was Saturday, he actually took his pillow and he went and slept on the couch. So I think the next morning I had wrote a letter, and I was like, basically, I don't know if you're waiting on me to make a decision about this marriage, but I'm waving whatever flag that says I can't do this anymore. And then I also told him, I was like, if you don't feel like you can have a conversation without yelling at me, cussing at me, or whatever, I would please ask that you would, like, write it in a letter. And so he wrote a letter back and basically was like, yep, you're right. We can go our separate ways. You can have a place. Give me some time to move out. And then he basically tried to give me like a half apology. And so I knew, like, nah, like, this is what I'm talking about. The disrespect is loud, but the apology is super silent, right? And it's like, no, I need the apology to be just as loud as the disrespect was, right? So either way, that was back in March, right? So we still continue to live together until about June, July. So June, my birthday happens. I actually go out of town to Texas to hang out with my friends because I just knew I needed to just get away. And so he was like, no, it's time for you to come home. We were talking about whether, you know, the marriage could work or not, all of this stuff, right? Until I had already found out that he had decided to move within our same complex. And so I'm just like, he's like, is that going to be a problem for you? And I'm like, no, like I didn't have beef at the time. So I was like, yeah, it's fine. So essentially come July 2nd, he moves out. And he moves downstairs and he takes his daughter with him. So that's honestly when things just really just opened up and I was able to see things for what it really was, because information has started to fall into my lap. And so when information started to fall into my lap and I started to see stuff and I was like, who's that person parking in your parking spot? Or, you know, why don't certain things add up? I started to do my research, and in doing my research, I started to pull, you know, statements, phone statements. I started to pull bills, and I have found out that for basically since the beginning of our marriage, he has been talking to someone else. He's been talking to multiple individuals under my phone plan. Crazy, right? And so I have found so many people that I had to highlight them by color. Like, okay, this is pink, this is green, this is blue. So yes, I have found out that information. I have found out that he was financially had not been paying bills, had bills overlapping, and yet because they were in his name, I didn't know until I started to get things in my name. And then they were like, oh, let me show you your history. And I'm like, whose history is that? That's not my history. And so yeah, it was just completely eye-opening. And then also even finding out, like, I would go check my mail and I would get certain things later on and I realized he was hiding mail. Like, you would never think that the person that you decide to marry and that you take vows with, that they can be a predator. One, like, that's completely what I found out, was that he's a predator, but also just so malicious and so just a fraud. I don't know any other way to say it. And so these are the things that I had just kind of had to process and to grieve. And it would feel like, you know, I would find something out and then, you know, I would process and heal through that. And then I would find another piece of information out. And it's just like, so now I got to process and heal this new piece of information. And so, yeah, that's just kind of how I ended up kissing a fraud. I tell you this so you guys can have the context of the story and why I'm telling you guys this, but I'm really in a good space. I'm in a better space. I have no ill will or whatever to anybody. It's love and light over here. And yeah, I look forward to continuing to read your comments, and I will talk to you guys and see you guys in my next video.